Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to another Genie Vlogger live stream. I am Jarrett Ross, the Genie Vlogger, and hopefully everyone's doing well. I see we got a lot of people jumping in, and hopefully, yeah, everyone's having a good day so far. Um, I've been crazy busy researching stuff over the past few days. uh, for hopefully what's the next episode of YouTuber Family Trees. I have a few in the works, and I keep having to reorganize them because as I'm working on one, I'll hit something where I'm like, oh, I need to get this information for it. And then it's like something that I either have to order or I have to contact archivists or stuff like that. And so it's like, yeah, it's been kind of a crazy couple of days. It's been kind of a crazy couple of months, honestly, but hopefully everyone's doing okay. We'll go through and do the hellos for everybody, and then of course, if you have questions, ask them in chat. If you want to have a guarantee answer to your question, because I won't be able to see all questions in chat, do a super chat. I have that little thing up there mentioning that. So that'll I don't know what I'm trying to say. If you want a guaranteed answer, that's the way to go. And as well, I really appreciate any super chats or super stickers because it helps me keep doing this. Without your support, I might not be able to keep doing this. But one other thing to mention that for some reason I keep forgetting about mentioning in these, and I'll probably mention it again, is if you are looking for consultations or you do want to get like help from me for research projects, I have consultations available, and I'm actually going to start opening things up to take on genealogy projects. I'll be very limited with that, but let's start going through some hellos. I've kind of given that beginning spiel as usual. And Anna Tomaso, hello from Rochester, New York. Hello, Anna. You, I think, let's see, is it show you as number one? Okay, so some of you might have noticed that there's some like number ones and number twos and number threes and all that. And basically, YouTube has not enacted. I don't know if that's the best term. They have this new like top fans feature on the live streams. So I think it gives you like number one, number two, number three, depending on how much you interact and all of that. So today it's going to be everyone's probably going to get it at some point. But over time, I think it'll be kind of fun to be able to see, a lot of the folks that I know are on here constantly, like Anna, who I got to meet at Roots Tech earlier this year. And that was really cool. I got to meet a few of you at Roots Tech earlier this year. But Anna, I saw her walking up and I knew it immediately. I said, is that Anna Tomaso? Lightning fan, hello from Tampa Bay. Hello, hope you're doing well. And Irene coming in from Oak Island. Hello, Irene. Hope you're having fun out there. I hear it's pretty nice out there right now. Stig, hi everybody from Tuscany, still on vacation. Good to hear, Stig. Hope you're doing well. Karma Gal, hello from Nebraska. Hello, Karma. And Julia Joyce from North Baddesley, England. And I'm realizing that we've actually got a good bit of people in here, so I'm going to try to click through quickly here. And of course, questions, go ahead and ask them. If we don't get any questions, then I might start talking about some of the research I've been doing. WKN Edits, hello from England. Hello. Garden Kitty from Louisville, Kentucky. And then Charlie, good to have you. Evening. Our wonderful mod admin, whatever you want to call him. En dan Nick, goedenavond vanavond. Alles goed? Ja, alles goed met mij. Ik hoop dat alles goed met jou ook. Eve, hello from sunny and hot Ontario, Canada. Yeah, it's sunny and hot here too. It's humid in North Carolina. I hate the humidity. Kills me. Having to walk my dogs every day, and like the first walk is always just like feels like I'm swimming through a sauna, or I guess I'm walking through a sauna. Hello from Cynthia. Hello from Virginia. Happy to catch you live. So appreciate the consultation I had with you. Oh, awesome. So glad you're able to catch a live, Cynthia. Yes, I'm glad that consultation was helpful for you and a great place to shout out again. I do have consultations available for anyone that is looking for help, especially if you're looking for Jewish genealogy help and DNA help as well. But of course, all sorts of stuff. Charles Wapples, Georgetown, Kentucky. Hello, Charles. D. Lancaster. Hello from Utah. Hello, D. Lancaster. Karma, getting hit with storms. A branch even went into someone's apartment. Wow. Yeah, we've been getting some storms, but they aren't taking the heat away. Leslie, hi. Thank you for joining. And we've got Brian Nash from How We Got Here Genealogy. Afternoon, Brian. Hope you're having a good day, eh? Patrick Jones, happy Friday from Virginia. Happy Friday, Patrick. Thanks for joining. And hello, Mom. Hope you're doing well. Geronimo, hello from Argentina. Hello, Geronimo. Some South American representation. Great to have you. Thank you for joining very much. Sagar Rydberg would like to hear your research, though. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it. I don't want to talk too much about it because it'll be coming out in a video soon. It'll be a YouTuber family tree episode on a YouTuber that I covered a while back. Did not expect to take this long to do a second episode for them, but maybe some of you will have an idea who that might be. Honestly, once I start showing a little bit, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I might have to show some other research. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll set a chat goal for that because they do those goals. So maybe I'll do that where if we can get some chats, I'll show that specific research of what's coming up. And then Garden Kitty, thank you. Or did I already get? Either way, hello. Karma, here in Nebraska, if the heat doesn't get you the humidity well, yeah. Julia Joyce, Ancestry cluster is not good compared to MyHeritage. Yeah, Ancestry clusters have been kind of meh for me so far, but not terrible. I was actually expecting much worse. And when I looked at the various clusters I had, especially on my Jewish families, I was very surprised to see that it was actually doing a pretty good job of breaking things down. And this was especially evident on my mom's auto cluster on Ancestry, where basically I could see it created two clusters. Both of these clusters technically were related, but one cluster was a much closer cluster of the family that had both Dutch Sephardi and Dutch Ashkenazi, and then the other cluster was just the Dutch Ashkenazi branch. So it was kind of able to like distinguish that, which was very interesting. And you know, for an endogamous population like a Jewish population, that's kind of one of the things that we're very hopeful for, is that if they're going to roll stuff out like that, that it will actually be useful for us. I'm hoping as time goes on, they open it up to have more matches available for us to use for the clusters. And I'm also hoping as time moves on that they'll give us the ability to manipulate how the clustering is done. Similar to what the endogamy auto cluster that was created by E.J. Blum, the one that I was actually a consul. I guess I was just I was a consultor. What? Why consultate? For some reason, I wanted to say consultator. Why can't I think of this word? I'm making up words. I was a consultator on this. I'm going to try to pull it up, and basically, it was an auto cluster that allowed you to choose the minimums of segment matching and the amount of centimorgans you matched, and just all these different things that basically allowed you to manipulate it much further than, well, there really wasn't much manipulation that you can do with the auto clusters on most of these sites. Oh wow, I did that wrong. Just give me a second. I'm logging into my GenMatch, but with the auto cluster on Ancestry, it is, you know, I think for how long of a, you know, from when they announced it to it rolling out, I think it got a little too much hype. And so people, you know, I think, you know, I'm giving it a bit more leeway, but it is kind of like, not that amazing. Okay, autocluster endogamy. Just want to make sure it's not showing anything. Okay. Okay, here we go. Ba, 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 ba. So there we go. So here's the autocluster endogamy. And we came up with presets. This was something that EJ and I talked about a lot, trying to figure out what the presets would be. We've played a lot with it, and there was a blog article written, and I can't remember his name. He did a comment on the video, which actually YouTube deleted, and I messaged him and said, comment again, because he'd written this like 5-series article going through it, and I want to say he had Jamaican ancestry, but I could be wrong. It doesn't matter. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, post a link to that article series, because it's a great series to help understand this. But it allows you to, first, several options are available to restrict the DNA matches linked to the provided kit. So that's what DNA matches are going to be the ones that we're looking against as the main match. And so what's the upper threshold? What's the average segment size? So average segment size would mean in centimorgans, let's say you match someone at 100 centimorgans and you have 10 segments. Well, 100 divided by 10 is 10 centimorgans, so the average segment size is 10. So that's kind of what they're looking for. This is a technique we use for researching endogamous populations. There's also minimum largest segment size, as well as the number of largest segments. That was something that EJ had come up with of like, could we use that? And I don't know if that's been super helpful necessarily, but I think it has been somewhat useful in just kind of being able to find some of these useful matches that don't have a large segment, but by having a lot of medium segments, they have a bit more confidence, I guess would be a way to say it. And then SNP count minimum thresholds, and that's getting really in depth. That's like the overlap amounts, which most people, it's really not going to matter that much. And then the shared match filtering. So how much is your match matching the shared match? So you can set the minimums there, the largest segment, the number of segments, the minimum shared centimorgan segments, and then with cluster settings, the sparse, regular, and dense. I think that's more about the visual of things. So hopefully Ancestry will lead to a point where they enact settings similar to this. Now, in terms of the back end of things, I don't know what they're doing. That might be different than how EJ had it set up, which for anyone who's not familiar with EJ Bloem, who is a Dutch genealogist slash developer, I guess you would say. He's the one who created autoclusters. And for anyone that's been like, what is an autocluster? This that you see on the screen, this is what an autocluster is. It looks at a bunch of your matches and then sees how do your matches also match your other matches. And then based on that, it can cluster them together. And each cluster, you're usually, the idea is that with each cluster, there's going to be a shared ancestor for everyone within that cluster. So if you don't know how these people are related to you or each other, whatever, you build out all of their family trees and you should eventually start finding a lot of similarities, either locations, names, or maybe even specific ancestors. And so it's a way to help organize your DNA matches, because especially for a lot of people, they have thousands of matches. And if you come from an endogamous population, you might have hundreds of thousands of matches. So EJ Evert Jan Blom, but he usually goes by EJ. He's actually pretty active on Facebook as well. There's a genetic affairs group that he runs for people that really want to get into the in-depth stuff of this. And also he does a lot of announcements of the new tools he rolls out, because he rolls out a lot of stuff. So there's the auto clusters, which is what we're talking about. But there's also the auto tree, which then is looking at the trees attached to people. And then it creates this Watto sort of looking tree, but it kind of breaks things down in how these match. It automatically finds the match, the connection. So it's kind of like a through lines type of tool, but you can utilize it for like 23andMe. I think you connect. Well, you can connect Family Tree DNA here. I think you might be able to connect 23andMe. I'm not 100% sure if that's the case anymore. And I don't remember with the other websites, but there's also auto segments, and that's getting into the segments. So if you do a lot of like DNA painting and things like that, this can be really helpful. And then the auto kinship, auto lineage, auto pedigree. I'm not going to go through each one of those exactly what it is, but you can look into that. And I would suggest for anyone who's never gone on Genetic Affairs, I'm going to paste it in the chat for everyone too. That's a great site. So, all right. I saw that a $2 super chat came in. Thank you very much, Amiable160. Are living DNA results suspect? Elevated centimorgan counts. I'm not 100% sure. I have my DNA on Living DNA. I've uploaded a few family members that have given me access to upload their DNA to websites, and none of them have significant matches on Living DNA that we know how they're related to us. Now, all the matches I have on Living DNA, except for maybe one or two from my YouTuber Family Tree series, are all of Jewish ancestry. But of all the matches, of all the DNA kits that I've uploaded to Living DNA, I never found any useful matches. So I'm not 100% sure. But one thing we can look at is how they add up the DNA, how they add it up. Now, there's a lot more that goes into it than just how they add up the DNA, because one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that there's different methods, or not different methods, but there's a different way of calculating how much DNA people share. And this is what's known as Q scores. Basically, what it's looking at, or what a Q score does, is it changes how many errors we would allow within a specific amount of DNA markers that are read. And so some of the sites might use different Q score amounts, and that would change how much DNA they might read from someone. So they might, if one company does a Q score that's slightly different than another company, they might say, with the same DNA reading, they might say, oh, well, these people share 20 centimorgans, whereas the other company's like, well, no, they share 10. It's usually not that crazy of a difference. But what I'm trying to pull up here first, and maybe I'll just kind of try to do it here, is the ISOGG, International Society of Genetic Genealogy Wiki. They have a great comparison chart. Here we go. And so it tells you how they read the DNA. So before we were talking about Q scores and things like that, which I don't know if, do they say a Q score? Just so I can give people a reference, one thing that you might have heard too is Fred quality score. I'm trying to find a good, I'll just, the Wikipedia, that's fine. So the Fred quality score. So you can see Fred quality score, how much they have, probability of incorrect base call. So what's the base call accuracy? This was something that I got to learn a lot about when I was doing investigative genetic genealogy, because that was one of the techniques that I had started to do in terms of dealing with degraded DNA and low amounts of DNA. So we had a lot less reading, with most home reading or consumer DNA test readings like Ancestry and MyHeritage, you're getting a 99% reading. Okay. For these forensic DNA cases, they're lucky if they get a 90% reading or even an 85% reading. So you're dealing with a lot of missing DNA. And so by manipulating the Fred quality scores, we could get an idea of, well, what might be, instead of something that looks like it's 3 different segments, could it actually be one big segment? And just by manipulating the Fred score, see that. And Yeah, so Fred scores could be part of it, but I believe that most of the sites use pretty much the same sort of Fred score quality. If I remember correctly, I want to say it's Q20, but I'm not 100% sure. Where was I? Okay, so back to this chart. So with the chart at the top, 23andMe, FTDNA, Ancestry, MyHeritage, Living DNA. Okay, so we're going to go down, and now we're going to look at how much are they going to count at how much DNA that they count are they going to include in the total amount. So what that means is now that they've decided whatever Fred score they're going to use, now they're going to decide, well, how much DNA are we going to count as actual segments? So for most companies, it's usually a 6 centimorgan or 7 centimorgan minimum for counting segments. And okay, maximum number. Here we go. Chromosome browser can be adjusted. Okay, here we go. Criteria for matching segments. This is what we're looking for. So here we go. So first one, I think this was this Ancestry? Just so I know where to go down to. Yeah. Oh, 23andMe and then FTD. Okay. So 23andMe, 9 centimorgans and at least 700 SNPs overlap for one half identical region. Option 2, 5 centimorgans and 700 SNPs with at least 2 half identical regions being shared. So this is basically telling you how they're deciding what shared DNA they find to include. Because if you lower the threshold to 1 centimorgan segments, you're going to see a lot of stuff. But a lot of those 1 centimorgan segments are false positives. And that's why they use the typical 6 centimorgan, 7 centimorgan threshold, because that's about the threshold where they start to find that the true positives far outweigh the false positives to the point that we're going to be very confident with most everything over that. So then we have FTDNA, which changed theirs. For a long time, they were 1 centimorgan segments. It was a serious issue. Now it's a minimum of 7 centimorgan and whatever. I'm not going to go through all of them. Let's get to the question. So living DNA. Living DNA, 9.46 centimorgans for the first segment and at least 3 centimorgans for the second matching segment. So that is really interesting because it's a very high number for the first segment. Notice it's bigger than all the others. 8 centimorgans here, 6 centimorgans here. Well, I guess that's before timber, and then 8 centimorgans after. So that's Ancestry. Then minimum 1 7 centimorgan segment, and then here 9 centimorgan segment, 9 centimorgan. But then it's also weird that at least a 3 centimorgan segment, because 3 centimorgan segments are far below all the others. The closest would be 23andMe with that 5 centimorgans, but then we've got the 6 centimorgans, the 8 centimorgans, and then another 6 centimorgans. So if they're counting things as low as 3 centimorgan segments, then their amount of total DNA will be higher on average because there's going to be a lot of, think about it. If, you've got a 6 centimorgan segment minimum for your second segment, then that means that any 5.5 centimorgan segments aren't going to be counted. So if someone shares 2 or 3 5.5 centimorgan segments, well, that's already, 11, 16.5 centimorgans, and that's just 5.5. If we're going as low as 3, think of all the possible segments in between that. So that could very well be a big part of why that amount is elevated. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So Adam Biros, 160 living DNA counts small segments. One matches 45 centimorgan segment across 9 centimorgans, so average of just 5. So yeah, so they're counting very low amounts of segments. Brosif, thank you very much for the $4.99. I very much appreciate that. Hi, Jared. My big Y results came back, and I'm EPF224. I'm confused because the haplogroup report says EY69346. What could this mean? Thanks. Well, my guess is that one is your haplogroup and the other one is your very specific subclade. And the subclade would just be the like closest branch of your family tree. So in a sense, think of it as like one of them might be more of like you're a descendant of the, I'll just use my own family. You're a descendant of the Nunes Vaz family, which could trace back to the 1700s. But you're not just a descendant of the Nunes Vaz family. You're a specific descendant of your grandfather, Myron Nunes Vaz's branch. And so they're saying, well, you're a Nunes Vaz, but then they're also saying, but you're specifically Myron Nunes Vaz's descendant. So that's probably what it is. So let's take a quick look in here. Now, assuming based on your question that you've seen both of these in family tree DNA. But if not, let me know. Like if one's from 23andMe and the other one's your big Y result, then big Y is probably going to be the most specific. Okay, so here we've got EPF2546, and we can see that is, let me make that bigger. That's someone that they're estimating lived or was born about 400 BCE. So we can see here that big Y testers from this haplogroup often share someone within this big range. So you can see that this ranges all the way from about, what is that, 400 was it? Yeah, about 400 BCE all the way up to present day, it's saying, So that's that's an overall haplogroup, I guess you would say. So now let's see EY69346. I think we can EY whoops. EY 69346. EY 69346. Okay. Lame. Okay, we'll have to do it the other way. EY. I just don't feel like logging in. 69346. 69346. And then here we see EY 69346. Well, that's way much more forward in time. 1500. So we have two who their ancestry is Germany, two unknown country. And so obvious, some sort of a German connection here. And 1550 CE as the shared ancestor of everyone within that group is right within the edge of the genealogical time window. Now, obviously, depending on where this family's from, you might not be able to get that far back, but some family trees are able to trace that far back. And then with 4 matches, it's possible some of these matches could be closer to you, and then it's just, the way that the DNA has mutated, I guess you could say, hasn't really done there hasn't been a lot of mutations that have happened in the years of all those who've tested. Sometimes that happens, but it's usually, I think, if I remember correctly, it's usually about every 5 births there's a mutation, which is actually a really interesting thing, where they can use that to figure out when times were really prosperous. Because if there's a mutation every 5 births and things are very prosperous, there's usually more births. So women are giving birth to more children who are able to grow up and have children of their own. And so you'll see a lot more variation, a lot of different changes within a short time period. And then if it's a non-prosperous time, you'll notice a lot longer before the changes happen. Because instead of, a woman having, if a woman has 5 sons, one of those is likely going to have a mutation. And then if each of those have 5 sons, then there's likely going to be a mutation with each of those 5 sons. But if you have a woman where she only has 1 son, and then he has 1 son, and he has 1 son, and they have 1 son, and they can only have 1 son because they just can't support anything more than that, well, there's going to be fewer. So just an interesting kind of thing. But yeah, so it just looks like that's the deal, is that your EY69346, that's just your super close. That's why you do big Y, is to get that really specific subclade. Let's see. My block tree says EPF224 was a parent branch of EY69, but I'm curious why there's no haplogroup report for my specific branch. Oh, well, because it's not really like as much of a haplogroup. So haplogroup badges, modern age. Whereas opposed to like we look at this in the haplogroup story, Metal Ages, Imperial Age. And so it gets kind of more into the nitty or the older stuff. So they can not necessarily tell a lot more about it, but there's more history to put to it. Whereas with this, I mean, to know exactly what was going on with a family around the 1550s like that just through YDNA, it's going to be a lot harder because you just don't have as much to compare against. Because what they're able to learn for these older branches of the haplogroups is a lot of it based on the ancient connections and the archaeological information they find and things like that. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that was helpful in explaining that. All right. Once again, thank you again to Amiable160 and Brosif for the super chats. Really appreciate it. Very much helps support the channel. I'm going to go back a little bit just because I know I've been talking a lot and I missed a lot of people commenting. I guess today's probably a good day to try super chats if you have a question you really want me to answer. And we have a lot more hellos. Hello, everybody. My cousin Catherine, very excited. I was contacted today by a new cousin via Facebook. His great grandmother is the product of 4 of my Dutch lines and yours too. I was about to say, for anyone at this point who knows that they have Dutch Jewish ancestry, it's a guarantee that you can find out how you're related to other people with Dutch Jewish ancestry. The only people that wouldn't apply to are people where they had ancestors that immigrated to the Netherlands like in the 1920s and 30s and stuff like that. But otherwise, like families that have been around, especially since like the 1700s, you'll find a connection. It's so cool. All right, let's see. Just gonna do a lot more of those hellos. Okay. Let's see. WKN edits. Are my MyHeritage matches reliable? Because it says one of my matches is my granddad's cousin and don't want to tell him yet because I can't confirm it. Yeah, I mean, the matches are reliable. When you find someone is a DNA match, you're almost always going to be able to find some sort of, well, I guess I shouldn't say it like that. If you were able to build a perfect family tree for everyone who is a DNA match, you would likely find a shared ancestor sometime within the past 500, 600 years for the like ancestry DNA tests, not like Y-DNA tests like what we have up here. Y-DNA tests, whole different thing. More like these autosomal DNA tests, these ones I'm talking about. And there are the possibilities of false positives with DNA matches, but that's usually dealing with matches where you have like one small segment that you share with them or one or two or stuff like that. And then when you're dealing with people coming from endogamous populations, which would be populations where there was many generations for hundreds, if not thousands of years of people from that one population having children largely with only people from that same population. So island populations have some of the highest amounts of endogamy. Like Pacific Islanders probably have the worst endogamy to deal with. They are all related to each other a whole bunch of times. So their amount of shared DNA with each other is elevated greatly. And so it's not even necessarily that they're false positives there. It's just more that it's making it seem like they're a lot closer related than they really are. Jewish populations are also a common endogamous population. French Canadians, Creole and Cajun populations have very well-known endogamy. Although Creole and Cajun endogamy is a very, very unique and interesting one, both in their own rights. Something I imagine a lot of people have learned about with the whole Pope having Creole ancestry. Um, but yeah, so if you have a match on there to your grandpa, um, or I guess a match to you, and it's saying that it's through your grandpa's side, you need to research it and make sure that it's true, because or make sure that that line of connection is true, because it can be misleading in how they're related. So some of these sites, or not some of these sites, all these sites like Ancestry, MyHeritage, and all that, they try to make it easier for the consumer to connect with their DNA matches. But those tools that they have are not perfect and can make it seem like other stuff is going on when it isn't. So if it's telling you that, oh yeah, we think it's your granddad's cousin for some reason, well, look into that. Like, that person that's a DNA match to you, they're definitely a cousin, but whether it's through your grandpa's side or a different side of your family, that's debatable. Same thing with how distant relatives are. A lot of these sites will give you a relationship projection, and it's one of the things that irks me the most when I start working with people is that that's the thing they always focus on. They never look at the amount of shared DNA. They look at the projection that Ancestry tells them. Well, Ancestry will tell you, could be a second, a third cousin, when really it could be a second cousin, could be a first cousin once removed, could be a second cousin once removed, could be a third cousin once removed, could be a third cousin, could be a half second cousin, could be a half this, could be a that, could be, there's so much more that it could be. And so people get locked into this. Well, it has to either be this or that, or, and that's why things like the Shared Centimorgan Project, are really important to being able to do good genetic genealogy, because you share 300 centimorgans with someone. Well, Ancestry might tell you, oh, this is going to be a second cousin, but look at all the possibilities of what they could be. And there's a lot that goes into analyzing the DNA matches too, how old the DNA match is, how old you are. Because if you are, the DNA match is much older than you, it's probably less likely that they're going to be in a generation down from you. It's possible, but less likely. So if they're an older person, then, they might be an older generation. It helps you kind of hone into things. But a lot of people get mixed up from stuff. So yeah, hopefully that answered the question. All right, let's see. Need to take a drink. My throat's all scratchy. Talking so much. All right. Oh, that feels so much better. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna kind of just try to click on some hellos because I saw a few jumping in there. Saw a few people talking about ancestry clusters. I think they'll get better. I hope they get better. Let's see. Rob, good novins, Brian. Good to have you. All right, let's jump forward. Some more hellos. People making it in. All right, let's see. Priscilla Lucas, my paternal and maternal haplogroups don't reflect my race. Would I still be able to get traced back to a specific tribe if I were to take an African ancestry DNA test? Now, this is a question that doesn't come up a lot, and I'm kind of happy about that in some ways. Part of it has to do with the fact that African Ancestry DNA, the company, is not a company that most genetic genealogists recommend. There was actually a great article written about them by a genealogy colleague of mine, Shannon Christmas. I'm going to try to pull that up. Yeah, here we go. Just Say No, African Ancestry's DNA test. So Shannon Christmas, amazing genealogist. He has his blog, Through the Trees blog. Here, I'll post that in chat for anyone that wants to check it out. That's just to the blog though. But you can, Just Say No, African Ancestry DNA test. And the big thing that it really just comes down to is that they don't test a lot. This is how much they're testing. So African Ancestry tests 8 Y chromosome DNA STRs and about 350 to 370 mitochondrial DNA markers. That is a super low amount. Just to give you an idea, the smallest DNA test that family tree DNA does for Y chromosome testing is a 37 STR marker. The biggest one they do is their big Y700, as in 700 STR markers. So that's a big problem. And then for the mitochondrial DNA markers, if you do the full test, or if you do family trees mitochondrial DNA test, they only do one test that does all your mitochondrial DNA. So not just 350 to 370 markers, it's doing the whole thing. Region 1, region 2, and the third part, whatever they call it. The other problem is that they have notoriously told people that they have specific connections through haplogroups to tribes in Africa that other DNA testing then proves very confidently false. And I think one of the biggest examples of that was with Henry Louis Gates Jr., which he talks about, where basically he was told that he had this Y DNA signature that was Egyptian, but then they were able to find through much further comprehensive Y DNA testing that he actually had Irish Y chromosome, tracing to Nile of the Nine hostages and suggesting European ancestry. So this is a bit older. This is from 2019. So, I don't have any personal experience with African ancestry DNA. The closest experience I have is a couple of years ago when I did research on Jabari Walker's family tree, who runs the channel From Nothing, an absolutely amazing channel about African history. Go watch. If you don't know about that channel, go check it out. He's not talking about African colonization and all of that. He's talking about tribal history. I think he does cover colonization stuff, obviously, because that is part of the history. But he does an amazing job about really getting into good history. But when he did that, it was a collaboration between myself, Jabari, and Matt Baker from Useful Charts. And Matt Baker had Jabari test with African ancestry as like a multitude of tests. And I remember, I kind of actually suggested to Matt from Useful Charts, possibly not doing it, but, that it, is up to him. And I sent this info. So I also don't know, they may have changed. Maybe they test more now. I don't know. I haven't heard much about them. I'm not even sure if they're still around. Maybe they are. But from my understanding, it wouldn't be a test I would suggest. I would suggest just doing a test with family tree DNA for your haplogroups, or not for your haplogroups, but for Y DNA testing, mitochondrial DNA testing. That is the best testing. If you don't have any, if your paternal haplogroups and your maternal haplogroups don't show an African connection, then you won't be able to find a connection to the African tribes in your ancestry through that way, because it's not going to represent your African ancestry. Are there ways to find out what African tribes you might be descended from? I'm not 100% sure. I know there are a lot of people working towards that. That is a big goal for a lot of people. I think that it certainly could be possible, but I think it's something that it's very difficult. You're really fighting up against a, couple hundred years of absolute horrible behavior, destroying people's histories, your history, and overcoming that is not easy. I think that there could be ways autosomally. I think it's possible, but I don't know if it's possible now. So hopefully that helps. All right. Give me a second. I need to blow my nose after. Okay. Let me just make sure. Okay, cool. Neek question. Saw that regularly my matches don't match my mom, but do match her mom on Ancestry. All under 20 centimorgans. Happens more often than I would suspect if it would only be misreads. The only thing I can think of, and I don't know how Ancestry handles this, is when your mom tested versus your mom's mom tested and when you tested. Because what I'm thinking is it's a possibility, depending on if one of you tested at a much earlier time than the others, if they were using different chips, which I believe Ancestry has updated the chips, the microarray chips they use for DNA testing, which actually they might actually tell us in here. Let's see. Okay, so the SNP chip tested for testing. Okay, they don't have anything. Let's see, chip. Okay, it's just these. Okay. But basically, a lot of the companies will update the chips that they use. These companies, Illumina is the main one. They're always coming out with new SNP chips. I think I've pulled this up before, but like if you got it. If you do any sort of SNP testing in genetics, it doesn't have to be genealogy. Obviously, SNP testing is used for a lot of stuff. Let's see. Do they have microarrays? So they have a list somewhere. I'm trying to find it of like the microarray kits that they have. Let's see. All microarray kits. So here we can see all the different microarray kits that they have. They have a whole bunch of them. And they basically just, they do different stuff, test different stuff. I know that, let's see, species category, human. So just looking at human genotyping, there's 22 different chips. And so if there was testing at different times, that's kind of what I'm thinking might be the case, but it also might have to do possibly with errors going on. So, there's always that 1% margin of error with reading the DNA. And it makes me kind of wonder if it's all under 20 centimorgan, if it's all under 20 centimorgans, could it possibly be that there were some misreads on your mom's profile that caused that to happen? I don't know if it would necessarily. And the other option could be that something's going on with the timber algorithm. So it could be. Hard to say. Donovan family history. Have you found the sort by largest segment to be more accurate than total DNA shared? Very interesting question, because that is a technique I use consistently. I don't know if I would necessarily say more accurate, but I would say that when you're dealing with matches that have a larger segment, you have a higher confidence of that relationship being genealogically findable. And I honestly use this technique mostly with endogamous matches. So if I'm dealing with a case of a Jewish DNA tester, or a Creole DNA tester, or a Pacific Islander, or I'm trying to think of some other one. Puerto Rican DNA testers. Puerto Ricans have a decent amount of endogamy. Sort by largest segment can be super helpful. But the reason why it's helpful for endogamous populations is because endogamous populations, they're all related to each other in many ways. So they're going to have a lot of DNA, a lot more DNA they share, but it's because they have a lot of more distant ancestries. Well, the more distant the ancestry, the smaller the segments you share. So if it's an endogamous match where you don't have any recent ancestry, it's all distant ancestries. When you look at the segments, it's probably going to be a lot of 6 centimorgans and 7 centimorgan segments, as opposed to if you have someone who is truly a match. So this is also why average segment size is really useful for this. So, let's say you have a match that's 100 centimorgans, but it's across 8 segments. Well, 100 divided by 8, I don't know exactly what that is. I want to say, what is that? 100 divided by 8. Dude, I'm not going to do it in my head right now. 1 divided by 8, 12.5. So that's a pretty good average segment size. But so that would be a match I'd want to look into. But let's say I have a 100 centimorgan match across 15 segments. Well, a 100 centimorgan match across 15 segments, that's an average segment size of 6.666666, whatever. So that is going to indicate to me that that match is most likely an endogamous match. So average segment size, largest segment size, that's a useful way to kind of do that. So with largest segment size, you're usually looking for segments over 20 centimorgans. Depending on what population you're working with, sometimes you might want it higher, sometimes it might be okay lower. Often the trick is kind of manipulating it as you go along, because the way that I like to explain this is that it's not a hard and fast rule of if it doesn't fit into this 10 centimorgan segment average, then we rule it out. That's not at all what you want to do. It's more about organizing your matches so that you're spending your time focusing mostly on the matches that you have the best chance of actually finding a connection. So you might go through a bunch of the ones that fit that. And then as soon as you're done going through those, well, now you need to go through the ones that didn't fit that, now fit the next step criteria. So if you look at all the matches that have over 20 centimorgan segments, well, you've gone through all of them. Now it's time to get to, let's use 15 centimorgan segments as the largest. And you're going to have a harder time because then you have more that you're up against, but it's just that. It's about organizing your matches because you're dealing with thousands of them. And especially for people that have endogamous population or come from endogamous populations, you might be dealing with 30, 40, 50 different matches that are over 100 centimorgans. So it can be a lot. So hopefully that was helpful. If that answers it. All right, let's see. Geronimo's got kind of like a 3-parter question. Let's see. All right, I have a brick wall with one of my grandma's great-grandfathers. So one of your grandma's great-grandfathers, so that'd be, what is that, your grandma's father, mother, grandma's father's great, mother's second, then, so your 4th great-grandfather. I tested her and she has 60 DNA matches ranging from 20 to 40 centimorgans that I'm confident come from one of his ancestors. They all triangulate on chromosome 15. Could this help, or these centimorgans? Wow. Could this help, or those centimorgans suggest a more distant ancestry? He was inconsistent in his statements about his parents and place of birth. I don't even trust that he used his real name. I mean, with 20 to 40 centimorgans for the total, it is a low amount. And then you're saying they all triangulate on chromosome 15. But then the other question is, how big is the segment that they're all triangulating on? But I mean, it's certainly possible. It seems like you found some sort of a cluster. I'm not quite sure why, why you're confident that it's coming from one of your grandmother's why it's coming from that specific great grandfather of your grandmother's. I assume that it would be based on you having other DNA matches in there that you're comparing against that either are matching and are from this same great grandfather's descendancy, or but I mean that's really kind of the big thing. That would be the bigger thing I would focus on. Like the triangulation is more of a tool to indicate that yes, you're on the right path, but it's not going to prove anything necessarily. I know a lot of people use chromosomes like chromosome triangulation as proof for things, and it can be used as proof, but it has to be used as proof along with more. And so a big piece that you really do need is to have the correlation with known other descendants. So it's your grandmother's great grandfather. Well, hopefully you should have a lot of descendants from that great grandfather especially if you can find people that are from, other branches of the tree, not descending from your grandmother. So, if your grandmother had siblings, having them test would be helpful. If she had cousins, having them test would be really helpful. If somehow if she has aunts or uncles or her parents are alive and able to test, that would be even more helpful. And then, of course, if there's any cousins that, let's say great grandfather had a couple of different kids, and you have descendants from some of the other kids you don't descend from that great grandfather, those would be really helpful as well. And then using not only these 16A matches that you have, but having these 16A matches comparing against all of these other cousins as well. And that's really where the triangulation comes best into play. And then, of course, then you need to start proving it through the paper trail. So, with all of that, with all the DNA stuff correlating and all that, that's all great. And it's all indicative of connections, but you can never say for sure what that connection is until you can have something to prove it fully. So it certainly sounds like you're on the right path, but there's certainly a lot more work to go through. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps. Okay, let's see. Just kind of going through this stuff. Catherine, my heritage theory of relativity and ancestry through lines relies on the trees people upload. There are a lot of errors. Don't believe everything you find. 100%. They're very useful tools, but because they do base it on what other people are building, and especially what anyone can build on Ancestry, someone could go into Ancestry and create a completely fabricated tree, connect tons of records to it. An Ancestry system is going to start recommending that to people that have those people or records or whatever in their tree. I don't know if there's really any cases like that. And I guess that'd be an interesting question to ask someone at Ancestry is, do they have something in their system to recognize obviously false information? But I know that's a big issue for a lot of us that are really into the genealogy stuff on Ancestry, and we know stuff is wrong and you can't reject it. But that's also one of the big positives about MyHeritage's theory of relativity is you can reject things if they are incorrect, and you can approve them if they are correct. So that would be something I would love to see Ancestry include as well. Drea, a bit of a different type of question for you. Any recommendations for things that look more at ethics re genealogy? I read a book recently that's got me noodling and I'd love to study more. That's an interesting question. In terms of ethics genealogy, the only thing I can think of, I don't know if I have it on my bookshelf up here. Do I have it on my bookshelf up here? No, I don't, do I? What do I have up here? What do I have up here? I have a lot of my Jewish books up here. I must have it downstairs. There's the Elizabeth Schoen Mills book on professional genealogy, and they have a section in there. That book is definitely more of a like a textbook sort of thing, big, thick, chunky thing. Great book if you want to become a professional genealogist. Very useful, especially for like report writing and understanding a lot of this stuff with things. It is a bit older though. I don't know if there's any updated versions. In terms of ethics though, what else do I have here? Oh, I have this isn't really ethics, but good series. Nathan Dylan Goodwin stuff. What else do I have? Yeah. No, I don't have anything good here. I can't think of anything off the top of my head either. Yeah, I'm not sure. Are there any good ethics books? What's really funny is actually, I think I can't remember if they're act like married or partners or what the deal is. But I think it's Nathan Dylan Goodwin's partner. Um, I can't remember. It does a lot of ethics stuff. At least I think they are. I don't know if they are. I might have to look into it. Because they who was it? Yeah. But basically, what I'm thinking of, there was a panel at Roots Tech a couple of years ago about ethics, and it was not heavily attended, but it was very interesting. All right, Mokasin, hello. Do you plan making a video on advanced tools such as G25 or QPADM models? I am not sure if I know what you're talking about. Let's see, G25 models, because I think this is. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's see. Oh, Eurogenes. Eurogenes. No, I have zero plans because this is outdated stuff that really is not useful. Yeah. Eurogenes Global 25. It's just more admixtures. Yeah, G25, Eurogenes Global 25, and then let's see what's QPADM. I think it's GEDmatch. Yeah, the thing about these, just the thing about the admixture tools, and especially with GEDmatch, is that it becomes way too much. People focus on it way too much. They do all these different ones and then start coming up with these crazy conclusions that there's no proof for. The thing about admixtures that I say all the time on this channel is they are the least reliable parts of the DNA test, especially when it comes to the genealogy side of things. That doesn't mean that they're not reliable. There is some reliability to them, but they're a very vague, blurry image of your ancestry. And what happens for a lot of people that do this whole going from one admixture to the other is that they end up with all these results that say very different things or slightly different thing. Or I guess it varies for people, but it doesn't tell you anything of value once you've done more than a couple, because then you're just starting to look at it just too many different ways. I'm trying to think of a good way to put this. And I was actually I was kind of happy I haven't had a lot of people asking too much about the GEDmatch calculators and all of that. Let me see. Before I show it, just want to make sure that I don't accidentally show something I don't want to show. Yeah. So, okay. So when you go on the admixture utilities, so all you have to do, free tools, admixture, heritage, and then there's admixture oracle if you want to do that. And then here's all the different ones, right? And then even within those, there are different ones. Actually, I'm really worried about privacy, so I just want to make sure. Okay, yeah. So, okay, we're going to go back. All right, so we've selected Eurogenes, right? We can do admixture proportions with a link to Oracle. We can do admixture proportions by chromosome. We can do chromosome painting and all that. The chromosome painting stuff can be somewhat useful with this, just because with the chromosome side of things. But here, okay, so we do continue. Now look at how many Eurogenes calculators there are. And usually the numbers indicate how many population groups are within the calculator. So the K13, there's 13 populations they define. K15, 15 of them, and 36 is the most. J-test is an interesting one because the guy who made J-test, actually I shouldn't say guy, the person who made J-test, I don't know if it was a guy or girl, whoever, actually made a blog years ago, that it was outdated. Years ago, it was outdated. That should give you a hint. And a lot of these are like that. They're outdated. And the way to utilize an admixture properly, in my opinion, is you look at an admixture. Maybe you can look at a couple of admixtures. That's not hurtful to look at a few. It's the once you start doing like 5 and 6 and but look at them to get an idea of what could be going on in this ancestry beyond what we already know. So a great example is the video I did for Steve Heimler, where all he knew was European ancestry. He did a DNA test and he had 15% Jewish ancestry. Okay, indicates a great grandparent. So now what do we use that information? Well, we estimate about a great grandparent where that Jewish ancestor would be. We build out the tree. We look at all the great grandparents. We look at all the second great grandparents and try to identify where that might be coming from. And boom, we did it. We were able to find that his great grandfather, Sidney Franks, was Jewish. And for whatever reason, his son did not continue being Jewish. So that's how you utilize these. And so with some of these being so outdated, that is a really big issue with it. Okay, here we go. I'm trying to I'm finding the article. Is this it? No, that's not the one I'm looking for. That's not. Is this it? Here we go. Okay. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. Notice, update. 19th of March, 2018. 2018. It's come to my attention that many people are still using the J-test and taking the results very seriously. Indeed, perhaps too seriously. Let me reiterate that this test was only supposed to be a fun experiment. It was never meant to be the definitive online Ashkenazi ancestry test, and even as fun experiments with admixture go, it's now horribly outdated and probably useless for anyone with less than 15 to 20% Ashkenazi ancestry. Now, I don't know if all of the admixtures are necessarily outdated like that. But in all honesty, I think it's really just all of these are largely outdated. A lot of them are outdated. I mean, obviously J-test for sure. But I think just in general, it's a major issue within genetic genealogy. And unfortunately, it's a lot of the people who are new to it and just getting into it where they really dive into that admixture obsession. And some of the people that get into that, unfortunately, I think are a lot of the people that are a little too in the whole race politics and ethnicity politics of it all. And, I see videos all the time recommended to me. And sometimes people are like, oh, will you react to this? And I'm like, I have zero interest in doing reactions to, the true genetics of this population and the true genetics of that population, because I'm not a population geneticist. I'm a genealogist. And, these tools, I'm looking at them from a genealogy point of view. So hopefully I didn't sound too mean or condescending with that. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful for some of you too. And oh my gosh. All right. I just saw this example, largest segment, 93 centimorgans. That's massive. That's like over 30 centimorgan largest segments. Like, whoa. But a 93 centimorgan segment for a total 214. Wow. That's a huge standout. I get the feeling that would be something that's a close relative in it. I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily say that they might be closer related than what 214 indicates, but I certainly wouldn't rule that out as a possibility. That is a huge segment. Wow. Berkey, hi. Hoi, hoi. Ik hoop dat alles goed met jou. En niet te laat. Yeah, niet te laat. Antonio, if two segments are close together, say with a gap of 4 to 5 centimorgans, they are more important of two segments of different chromosomes. I'm not quite sure what you mean. Are you saying there's two segments and there's a 4 to 5 centimorgan gap between them? All right, let me see if you had a bubba dubba dubba. I okay, yeah. If you can explain further, but I'm guessing you're kind of just saying the different chromosomes part is what's throwing me off more than anything. But I guess you're asking, is it more important of the two segments if different on different chromosomes? Two segments are close together, say with a gap of 4 to 5 segments. Are they more important if two segments of two? I don't know. I might need to follow up on that one. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting you're saying this because what I was talking about earlier with Fred's quality scores. Do I still have that pulled up? Yeah, Fred quality scores was that was one of the things we would manipulate when we found, or we would manipulate the Fred quality score when we found matches like that where there would be matching, but there would be these really weird small um, gaps between the segments. I don't know if they were 4 to 5 centimorgan gaps. We were usually looking more at SNP overlap for the gaps. But basically, we would have these gaps that we would then change the Fred quality score, and then all of a sudden those gaps would close, and what looked like 2 or 3 big segment or 2 or 3 small segments would all of a sudden turn into one big segment. So I don't know if that's what you're saying. So I guess if that is, that could be a possibility. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Uh, let's see. Okay. Luke Walsh, this is way over my head. I subscribed and liked anyway. Thank you very much. And for anyone who hasn't subscribed or liked, do that. And I also should mention, for those who don't know, I have a clip channel. I'm trying to get that to grow. Don't know what's going to happen with the new YouTube rules because they're rolling out new rules about reusing content. I don't know if that applies to stuff like me or people reusing others' content for clips, but I'm trying to do a clip channel, especially as a way to clip stuff from these live streams. So go subscribe to that, but be sure to subscribe to this and give this video a like if you haven't. Hope to learn more. Is it common for someone with a German grandmother to have a 23andMe that's 98.7% Irish? I don't know if I can necessarily say whether it's common or not, but what I can definitely say is that I have experienced a lot of people, well, they'll know, like, I have a German grandmother, but then when they actually build out the family tree, they find out, well, grandma's dad was German, but really it was grandma's grandfather that was German, and the other 3 grandparents of grandma were not German. And so that could be a possibility because sometimes certain ancestries will be the dominant one for people, even though they know they're multiple. Sometimes even one of the ethnicity that represents them the most is not one that's necessarily represented the most in their DNA. So that is a possibility that maybe your German grandmother wasn't quite as German as you thought. The other thing is that, there could also be an NPE in the family tree, or what we call a not parent expected non-paternity event, or whatever. There's a few ways to call it, but N is in Nancy, P is in Philip, E is in easy. And with NPEs, it's possible that, your German grandmother was actually adopted by a German family and she was Irish. The other thing to consider too, which I don't know if it's going to be as big of a deal here necessarily, but just the whole Northwestern European sort of thing of all these connections from all these different places and between Northwestern Europe. So, the British Isles, Scandinavia, and then of course, including some of Germany, some of France, Belgium, the Netherlands. And so, let's say German grandma came from Hamburg. Well, Hamburg is an area that correlates a lot more to Northeastern Europe, or not Northwestern European, because, it's right there on the coast. It's right near Denmark. It's, pretty easy to get to from different places. as opposed to someone that's going to come from Alsace-Lorraine, where they're going to have a much more French and sort of, Southern European connections with their family tree. And then you go to the other side, southeastern Germany, which I can't think of a town that's southeastern Germany that is an example, but you go southeastern Germany, and all of a sudden you're going to have a lot more connections to Polish and Austrian and Eastern European and Balkan and even Baltic and stuff like that. So that's the other thing to consider too. And then of course grandma, she's only 1/4 of your entire DNA, 25% about. So if it was like I was saying before, where she might not be as fully German as you thought, and then on top of that, maybe she has her German ancestries from Hamburg or somewhere that's much more Northwestern European. Maybe that's what's happening, is that she did come from that area, but that DNA is being read as Irish. Just because the thing is that Northwestern European DNA is difficult to decipher. So it's often common to have readings of other Northwestern European ancestries that you might not actually have in your ancestry. Granted, it's not usually the massive dominant one of 98.7%. Usually it's more of, why am I getting this 5% Denmark and, 2% Scandinavian when I only knew of family in the British Isles or whatever. So, it is interesting, hard to say an exact answer to this one, but a lot of, possibilities of what could be going on. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful. Eve, does Ancestry show shared matches that triangulate on the same chromosome? Unfortunately, no. Ancestry doesn't do any sort of chromosome I say chromosome browser. They have something that I think they call a chromosome browser, but that is the chromosome browser of like browsing your admixture on your chromosomes. Not a chromosome browser as in, looking at the chromosomes that you share between your matches. Yeah. All right. Let's go down. Oh wow, I've been talking and talking and talking. Thank you very much for becoming a YouTube member, Eve. I appreciate that. Something else for others that don't know, if you want to get a little bit of extra access to stuff, I post things every now and then. You get special emojis and things to use and all of that, and then early access to stuff too. Become a YouTube member or a Patreon patron. Like I've been saying this whole time, any sort of stuff, donations, the members, the Patreon patrons, all that stuff, it really helps me out. I mean, it'd probably be almost impossible to do some of this without that support. So thank you very much to everyone that does that. Okay. Let's see. Did you mean Elizabeth Shown Mills evidence explain? I think you said Patricia. Did I say Patricia? Yes, I meant Elizabeth Shown Mills. Patricia Shown Mills. You know what it might be? I have a cousin, Patricia. Patricia Mills. So maybe that's what it is. But yeah, no, Elizabeth Shown Mills. That's who I meant. Who wrote Evidence Explained, but she also wrote the, I think she wrote the professional genealogy book. Yeah. So this is the book I was talking about. And actually, if anyone wants to get it, I'm gonna post an affiliate link in chat. So, and if anyone's gonna buy anything on Amazon, click that affiliate link. It helps. I get a I don't know what it's called. I think I get a commission is what it's called. Doesn't cost you anything, but that helps support the channel as well. But that'll take you directly to that book from Elizabeth Shown Mills that I was showing before. But yeah. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, I know 93 Centimorgan person driving me nuts, not second cousin. Interesting. Okay. Okay. Oh, here we go. Antonio, that was a statement. If two segments are close together, they could be split from a larger segment from a previous generation. Ah, okay, okay. Yeah, that is a possibility as well. Um, although I kind of find, I mean, it would be the other person having. I guess it would depend. You'd have to analyze each one, because I find in my experience a lot of the recombination points are usually pretty clean, but you do have it where sometimes it'll do weird stuff with it. Um, yeah, there were Celts in Germany. And German. That's why when we talk about Northwestern European, I always include France and Germany and the Netherlands and Belgium as part of that, because you know it's kind of, it's like, I always think like a big circle, like right around, just start Norway, Sweden, swing down to Denmark, go into Germany, go into Netherlands, go into Belgium, go into France, come up through the British Isles. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, another, yeah, two segments that are on the same chromosome with a small gap between them are more valuable of two segments that are on different chromosomes. Okay, two segments on one chromosome with a small gap are more valuable than two segments on different chromosomes. Now that makes more sense. Yes. So basically, if you had a match and you had two segments that you were matching, or let's say you had two matches, and both of those matches you only shared two segments with them. One match you have two segments on the same chromosome and there's a 5 centimorgan gap between them. The other match has two segments and they're on different chromosomes. So the first match would technically be more valuable of one, because of the idea that the small gap is created through the recombination points. I think I'm getting. I think I understand that. So, yeah, Karma. I heard Alsace-Lorraine. My French great great grandfather was from that region. Yeah, a lot of Alsace-Lorraine connections. I find with people, and when I did Mr. Beats Ancestry, ton of it, ton of it. So, okay. All right. Wow, I actually caught up to things. And what time is it? Oh wow, it's 5:30. All right. Yeah, I think that might actually be a pretty decent stopping point, I think. Um so yeah, I think that might be it for today. Wow, I have felt kind of like a marathon. Like I was just like going and going and going and going. So yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed some last stuff. Like I mentioned earlier, I am doing genealogy consultations and I am starting to take on some genealogy projects as well. So if you would like to hire me to help you one on one with a consultation, I literally would meet with you on Zoom for either a half hour, an hour, and go through whatever you want. I also am doing research projects. And then like I said as well, if anyone can, or if anyone's interested in becoming a Patreon patron or a genealogy or a YouTube member, that helps out greatly in supporting the channel. It's been rough on YouTube for a lot of educational YouTube channels, and from what I hear from a lot of my YouTube friends, I'm not the only one. This AI slop is really getting serious, but have some interesting videos hopefully coming up soon. Like I've got so much crazy research I've been doing. I didn't mention it at the beginning, but I'll mention it now. The YouTuber I was talking about is Jabari Walker, the one that I've been doing a lot of work on researching his family lately. So hopefully his episode will be the next one. But working on some others as well, multiple others, lots of work going on. And then yeah, I think that's about it. So thank you everyone again for joining. I hope you have a wonderful Friday, wonderful weekend. I'm Jarrett Ross, the Genie Vlogger, and hopefully I'll see you next week on the next stream.